Here's a quick introduction to the Universal Design for Learning. Universal Design for Learning draws heavily on Ronald Mace's Universal Design in Architecture. His vision was to design products and environments that could be usable by all people to the greatest extent possible, without the need for significant adaptation. Simply put, he wanted to design items so that the most people can use them with minimal effort. Design assumes that every learner is unique and that learning opportunities exist for all. The following video is called UDL at a Glance, and it'll give us an overview as to how to provide those learning opportunities for all learners. There are three neurologic networks in Universal Design for Learning that are recognized. Recognition networks refer to how we gather facts and categorize what we see, hear, or read. Teachers must present information in different ways in order to tap into these networks. Strategic networks refer to how we organize and express our ideas. Teachers must differentiate the ways that students can express what they know in order to tap into strategic networks. And effective networks are how students are engaged and stay motivated and challenged and excited about their learning. Teachers must stimulate interests and motivation for learning in order to tap into effective networks. The first principle of UDL is to provide multiple means of representation. Give students various ways of acquiring information and knowledge. Examples would be to pair a video with a transcript or offer closed captions. Or you can pair a text with a visual illustration in order to explain concepts for visual learners. The second principle of UDL is to provide multiple means of action and expression. Give students different ways to show what they know. For example, you can have discussion circles like Socratic seminars, or have students write their responses to certain questions or discussion topics in blog posts. Audio responses are also available on software products like Nearpod. Or you can also use good old writing, journaling prompts in order to get students to write. The third principle of UDL is to provide students with multiple means of engagement. We can do this by giving students choices based on their interests. You could provide choice in topics to be researched or in ways to demonstrate learned knowledge. Regardless of where you provide choice, it should tap into student interest. For example, topic choices could include investigating Enlightenment thinkers like the traditional John Locke, or the less traditional feminist version in Mary Wollstonecraft, or abolitionist version in African American thinker Alexander Crummell. Or your choice can be in the product versions, whether the students are writing an essay, a poem, creating rap battles, or pieces of art. The following video will help us to understand how to create accessible documents by making them searchable, readable, legible, and scannable. We can make documents that are accessible across many different platforms. What does UDL look like in a classroom? Well, in theory, during planning, you want to make sure that you've thought about whether your materials are accessible and in multiple forms of representation. You want to make sure you communicate and you teach your students how to access that information, and if you've had the tools necessary given to your students to access it. And in assessment, you want to think about whether or not you provided student choice in showing what they learned, and if you taught your students how they can successfully demonstrate that learning. In practice, if you have a lesson on the Enlightenment, for example, you'd have a PowerPoint presentation where it's been checked for accessibility, and that video could be uploaded to YouTube with closed captions included or a transcript provided, so that you've been able to make it accessible to those who are hard of hearing. In a flipped classroom, you could show your students how to access the video and how to change the language or speed to best fit their needs. Or if you're playing it in class, you can play it once, and then students can replay the video using their Chromebooks or phones to access. A quick reminder would be to suggest to students to pause the video when answering questions in order to help them manage the content better. When assessing students, after they've watched the video on the philosophers, they could write a scripted dialogue or create a rap battle or write a comparative essay where they show their understanding of the three philosophers. Using UDL to build more equity. Universal design for learning has us build more equitable lessons for differentiating how we present and assess content knowledge. Teachers have been differentiating since forever. We have differentiated for multiple intelligences, learning disabilities, academic rigor, and now we can differentiate with technology. Using free tools such as YouTube or district provided tools such as Nearpod, you can make your lessons more accessible. Equality is assuming that everyone can benefit from the same supports. Equity means that individuals are given different supports to make it possible for them to have equal access to the game, thus producing equity. But justice means that all three can see the game without supports or accommodations because the causes of the inequity was addressed. By making your lessons equitable and just, you can make learning more accessible for all. Author and sociologist Pedro Noguera says that that's at the core of equity, understanding who your kids are and how to meet their needs. You are still focused on the outcomes, but the path to get there may not be the same for each one.